Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Into the Outer Realms, episode 164. I'm joined tonight again by my esteemed colleague, Craig Ansel of Three Beards Podcast, and also
The Dennis
from
Miller.
Sinister Mysteries. There you go. Take a
Yeah.
bow. Well
Number 60.
deserved.
What's the Dennis Miller thing?
Very cool. I love
That's right.
Dennis Miller. And fitting for your approach, which I love. Number 16, my good man.
Yes, I know. It's those numbers are ticking up quick.
They are ticking up quick. And Pine Gap was this was another one where I went in totally cold.
Most
And you
people
have
do.
not steered me wrong yet. And I'm embarrassed that I didn't know about this.
Well, that's the thing about this one. This is this is one of those things where it's like the tower that's always been there, and people suddenly somebody points it out, and you're like, oh my God, that is a tower, and you start paying attention. This is a facility, and I'm not going to jump ahead. We're going to get to it, but this is a thing that it's just like Area 51. It's known, but until somebody actually brings it up, like most people, like if I just said, "Hey, do you know what Pine Gap is?" No, I mean you said the same thing. You're like, "What's Pine Gap?" I'm like, "Ooh, you have to check this out because when we peel back this onion, everybody that's watching this show, that's going to listen to the show even in the future, you guys have all been touched by this or by this thing. Pine Gap has touched all of our lives in some aspect,
That is
and
a
it's one of
that
the
is a great point. And you know what I'm gonna say, and we're gonna roll the opening, come back, and we'll get into it and find out if I'm right. But this feels way more sinister. This feels way more big than Area 51.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
This is like Area 51 in how it is a remote facility. People are work there in secret. They're transported there in secret. This isn't just something like you hail an Uber and you can just drive up to the facility. This
right.
is just like Area 51. You're going to go up to a sign. I put it on the picture. It's below me right there. It's the same thing. You reach these things and it says turn around, no entry, armed. It's heavily guarded. It's the same thing. It works out the same thing. The only difference is it doesn't have a direct like testing like Area 51 UFO. It doesn't have that immediate connection, or does it?
Well, it took some digging. They do a really good job of scrubbing the internet about all of that, but I found something. So let's roll the intro, and when we come back, we'll get into it. Welcome, everyone. There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, the couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
All right. So Charles is already educating us here. Charles Smart, a friend of the show, and sort of like a research assistant in a way. Although that sounds not up to all he does, but I remember hearing this back during the Apollo missions as a link in the space network. Totally makes sense.
Well, yeah, this is one because it was started in the 1960s.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to see I mean, I wish we could have like a virtual, if we had the budget, we could do like the cut scene where you're like, when you're watching these red threads dive.
Yeah.
Because even this one connects to the CIA, to Kissinger. This is, like I said, this is one of those linchpins that he seems to have his fingers in so many things. And this is all during that same period. And so it wouldn't be a surprise, Charles, that he, we're going to use he as just because there's a thing, but it wouldn't be surprised if the Pine Gap facility was in that treaty was involved in the space program, because the whole purpose of it was to spy during the Cold War.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. They're going against the Ruskies. We had to beat Russia to space. So it wouldn't be anywhere out of the reach to say that this would definitely have had some connection to launches into outer space to get stuff up there. I mean, I would be shocked if it didn't.
Right. And that's really the first thing people need to know, where I went, whoa, okay. And in watching some podcasts, listening to some radio shows, doing the research, because there is not a whole hell lot out there. Craig put right in the center there, you see those 5 flags together. That is called the Five Eyes. That is Canada, the United States, France, Australia, and Great Britain.
Now, anybody would listen, who all, as I said, put this in the chat. Honestly, who in the listening right now knew about Five Eyes? Like I said, and just an honest thing. I mean, had you ever heard of Five Eyes before until just now?
No, I bet you. I'll tell you why, because I edit, counterintelligence and intelligence and terrorism academic journals. So that's why I know Five Eyes. But this is a conglomeration, combined resources. But as Craig said, it was first put forth in 1966. And those who have followed the show, Sinister Mysteries and the larger show, know in the parallels and patterns of it all, this is this is Kissinger kind of coming into his own. Very powerful. Making Condor, and you got Air America, and you've got all these things. He's Nixon's consigliere in a way, although, everybody calls the White House plumbers, all of them consiglieres. But I really think Kissinger was the one. Still 100 years old. That guy's still alive.
Yeah.
He's like,
in a way, Operation Condor was, in the mafioso terms, those were the hitmen. Those are the guys that are going out breaking the kneecaps, getting the jobs done. Five Eyes is the Dons that are sitting in the back of the Italian restaurant, having the cigars, having the vino, discussing the next thing. This is actually how Five Eyes operates. This would be like the brains of the operation. And Condor and those other ones are just the simple meat puppets, the meat shields that go out and, break stuff.
Exactly. And this is, I don't even know, like the mafia doesn't even have anything like this. I mean, this is sophisticated stuff. This is a secret joint defense facility. It's located just 10 minutes by car, which is interesting. The proximity to Alice Springs, which has a population of 25,000 people. And really, Craig is there to support the facility.
Yeah.
I mean, there just isn't much around there.
Yeah, this would be basically, using that Area 51 example, this would be basic, like having some town like, a Reno, Winnemucca, right within driving distance of this thing, but nobody drives there. They're all brought on by bus. Whereas on Area 51, everybody gets on Janet Airlines. It's flown to the facility. This is the same one. These are a plain, nondescript bus. People get on. I mean, if you want to get a Hollywoodized version, there is a Pine Gap series that was on Netflix.
Oh,
it's like six episodes. I think it's 6 episodes. Just full disclosure, the acting is terrible. Very, very, very terrible. I mean, it has, the subject matter could work really well. Just they didn't do a great job building characters. So
almost like maybe they didn't want it to succeed.
No, it's kind of like they wanted it to be a top tier movie, but it came somewhere in the B to C range.
Wow, I'll have to check that out. Is that what it's called? Pine Gap?
Pine Gap, yeah, it's literally called Pine Gap. You can find it on Netflix. I mean, it's like I said, the story itself was crafted the way they went around. They kind of did like a Jack Ryan type thing where there's the, they're going after the stuff. It would be a great story. The show would be actually really compelling if just the acting was better.
So
but I digress.
Is it sort of a sort of commercial, the way like the FBI shows or Quantico or something like that?
A little bit more. It's a little bit more to where they had the plot, but they don't really know how to fill it. And so they got to bring in like the social side of it. Just like you said,
okay. Yeah,
you got to have the hookups between two members, that people get moved out of their position, and so it causes that type of stuff. But
you have to fill all the boxes in the scoring matrix. Yeah.
Enough of Craig's ADD. Let's get back to topic.
So it's in the Northern Territory of Australia. It's hidden by mountain ranges, so you can only see it from the air, which is also interesting, which also protects it by spying from ships off the coast. So Australia being a giant island, you have all kinds of spy ships, listening in. That's, Russia and the United States and the SOSUSnet and all of those different kinds of things. That's the way it's done. Its code name is Rainfall, which is interesting. Its nickname, as Craig said, is Australia's Area 51, but its official name is the Joint Defense Facility Pine Gap. Where does the joint defense come in, Craig? This was eye-opening to me.
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay.
Go for this part.
So the base was commissioned in 1966, jointly owned by America and Australia. And it was built during the course of the late 1960s, and it opened in 1970. Here's the first sinister part of it. And make of this what you will. Although Australians give this credence. That's what I should say here. Mm-hmm. Harold Holt was the Prime Minister of Australia in 1967. On 17 December 1967, he's spending the weekend at a place called Portsea with some of his friends. And he decides, hey, we should go do some swimming at a place called, I think, Cheviot Beach. Cheviot for those playing and doing research at home. To have a swim before lunch, and he disappears. Never found again. Prime Minister, exhaustive search, supposedly, all of the researchers of Australia. But here's the weird thing, man, to me. A day later, Governor General Lord Casey announces that he has terminated Holt's commission as Prime Minister upon his presumed death. Like within 24 hours. Could you imagine? Yeah. Like when Eisenhower disappeared, he disappeared for a day. They didn't declare him no longer president. Weird.
Yeah. The only for me, the only one would be just like continuity of government, where it's just like they're out swimming, disappeared. Nobody literally knows where they're at. So they keep that one. You can see that, but it was just the fact that his disappearance, and then suddenly in the creation of this, treaty, the fight is really close. I cannot find the source. Again, after I told you, I've been trying to locate it so I could actually send it to you. I can't find it, but somebody had speculated and said that he had voiced, an opposition to being part of this, this thing. And so was this like a Kennedy thing where it's like, hey, we don't have a player in the game, and it's like,
right. I'm sorry. This is right at that time of that, right? In a year, 5 months and 6 months later, something like that. 4 months and 5 months later, they get Martin Luther King Jr. They get Robert Kennedy. They
were all cleaning house right about that same time.
Yeah, absolutely, they were. So if you're not with us, you're against us. So
it's kind of a current events thing. But yeah, did you see where China and Cuba have announced that they're going to be a partnership for building a spy base in Cuba?
There you go. Cuba's great revenge.
And so, it's the same. China and stuff like it is building almost like their same Pine Gap facility in Cuba. And it's just, people freak out. I'm like, well, it's the same thing. We've got them on their doorstep. It's natural that they're going to put it on our doorstep.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way it's played, right? That's how arms race, space race. You have to have more than one in, otherwise it's just exercise if you got nobody to compete against. So the scuttlebutt in Australia, and Charles says that he read that too, and it's what I heard as well. Folks, if you really, so much of the internet is scrubbed about this stuff, but I stumbled upon a podcast. It is called the All Aussie Mystery Hour. Two hysterical. We're friends with Renata and Anne from Australia. Yep. These girls are even more off color than they are, dropping the F-bomb constantly, but funny, and really intimately listenable. And they found the information, the UFO stuff that I'm going to share towards the end. We're going to stick with the spy Five Eyes things for most of the show here. So it's completed in 1970, and 400 American families migrate to this tiny town, Alice Springs, 25,000 people. These families come over, and there's about 800 people that work at this facility. It's kind of funny. The Americans who work there, who live in Alice Springs, when people ask what they do, they say they're gardeners. And it's a kind of nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Oh, I'm a gardener, and they know what that means. So rainfall, gardening, harvesting, it's all very clever. And then, Craig, before I turn it over to you for a while, there was a lot of controversy. This kind of reminds me of Denver Airport, when Denver Airport was being built. Like, people around it instinctually know something stinks here. And I think it stinks in a different way than when they're building like a federal penitentiary or something like that. That's, oh man, I don't want this element right there, the energy of it. This is different. There were land acquisition problems, land rights, displacement, indigenous communities, all of that kind of stuff. It was a remote location, so it was incredibly expensive to truck in all the materials that they needed. And this is quite an elaborate facility. And the infrastructure development, again, they had to build roads, power supplies, water management systems, communication networks. Folks, this is your tax dollars at work, at least in part. And there's about 800 people there. Now, Craig, did you know that there is an underground analysis section that until the early 90s, none of the Australian workers were allowed to enter?
Well, I didn't know that they couldn't get in there for that one. I mean, it doesn't surprise me because this was tied into so many even top secret programs from the U.S.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me if this was the gardening tool room. You're not, you guys aren't gardeners. You're not allowed into the, why would you need to be in the tool room?
This is where the intel is coming in.
Yeah, because this was even tied to like, most, I could give a whole list of this stuff, but I mean, most people have heard of, programs like Echelon. This is even tied in with Echelon. And so this is
tell people about that.
Yeah, about Echelon.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was that secret code name for this. Basically, it's the Five Eyes program, where it's just they in a way, Patriot Act kind of opened up the doors for stuff like really for this thing to take place, because a lot of people don't realize the thing gave MI6, the NSA, it gave all these people basically unfettered access to all of our data. I mean, metadata up the crazy thing. I mean, the secret FISA courts. I mean, most people don't really know a lot about that part, where they don't even have to get a warrant to tap like me and Joey's phone. All they have to do is they have to find some, the degrees of Kevin Bacon. What you have to do is you have Omar over in Qatar that's, as an accused, bomber, terrorist. Well, he's talking to this guy who talks to this guy who's business partners with this guy, who ends up, buying coffee from the coffee shop that Joey always goes to and talks to and gets coffee from. Well, under their thing, that means that all communications that Joey's involved with can be tied into. And so now if they could pay attention to these things, log all this stuff, keep track of this, even though Joey's not under surveillance warrant. And that's where the NSA surveillance site in Utah is basically, it's the American storage area that a lot of this information that's coming from like Pine Gap is actually getting stored.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. You build this massive facility out in the middle of nowhere, and when people ask like, why'd you pick that location, it's because of the abundant water. And anybody that's been to Utah, there's not an abundance of water.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's basically because it needs to be in a remote location where it's not easily accepted. And that's kind of where, like all these programs, that's why they pick places like this. I'm trying to think of the location in England. They have that one too. What is the name of that?
Well, you look
location?
for that. I'll address
Menwith
this
Hill.
here. Oh, okay.
Menwith Hill. It's
Yeah.
the same. It's the Royal Air. It's the same thing. It's these remote locations, and anybody that sees the pictures, you can see the same thing. You see all the surveillance domes for all the tech. It's a common theme with all these ones, and all these locations have these their own version of these facilities, and then Pine Gap is almost like the mothership. This is kind of like where everybody like this is kind of where and it branches off. Like every country has their own version, but
Right.
this is basically like the hub where they do something, and they're surveilling in real time.
Oh yeah. I mean
they're not waiting for something. They're actually listening. I mean, like there's a chance that you could have somebody watching the show because Pine Gap has been mentioned.
yeah. Hi there, guys.
I know. Hey, welcome to our Australian friends.
They're listening in the land down under.
They're listening tomorrow.
Right. As Charles says, and this is where the Sinister comes in our Sinister Mysteries. Our government cannot listen to your phone calls, although we found out through Edward Snowden's work in the NSA. But really, they're not supposed to, right? But the other four eyes can. And if we happen to be listening when they do, that's okay. Or if they happen to throw a sheet of paper or send an encrypted email and go, oh, hey, we happen to find this out. Well, we're not listening. It's interesting, Craig. Remember when the story broke that we were spying on Angela Merkel in Germany? Mm-hmm. Not part of Five Eyes.
Well, it was one of those. Yeah, it was one of those. And that I think they're actually rumored to be part of the Nine Eyes. In the there's ones that are limited partners like Japan, Korea. I think there's like 9 and 14. There's these different countries, and it's just like you said. You said the key word. We don't have the right to do it, but somebody else do the thing, and the treaty allows the sharing of information. So it's a loophole to where, yes, they can. Everybody was outraged, but through the treaty and stuff, through these partnerships, it was actually something that was allowed.
Yeah.
And that's, and a lot of people, that's what happens when you don't read the fine print.
Exactly right. We're all victims of it every day on these wonderful social media platforms.
Yes.
Facebook is reading my texts. Tanya and I went to the new Myers near us. Big deal, right? We're in a cultural oasis. So, a Myers opens up and suddenly it's a big deal because I can get a good California roll. And I texted to Joe and said, hey, there's a new Myers here. Open my Facebook panel today. Myers came up. Yep. There was no other record of me being in Myers. As a matter of fact, my phone was in the car because I don't take it into stores. So yeah, pretty crazy. So they were reading my text. I love it. So let's continue on here. Facilities isolated, located beyond security checkpoint. And the signs read things like this: Commonwealth of Australia, prohibited area, no trespassing, no photography, no firearms, with the threat of 7 years imprisonment for individuals who breach the area adjacent to the secure facility. And a number of years ago, there was a group of Australians who wanted to storm it, similar to the people who wanted to storm Area 51 and release the aliens. So there you go. So let's talk in detail, Craig. Again, because I edit these academic journals, I know about this stuff. I'm familiar. It's primarily operated by the U.S. National Reconnaissance Office with support from the CIA and the National Security Agency, and also the what is it called? The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. And this is the big, folks, if you're spy geeks, this is the big difference between human and SIGINT. Human being human intelligence. That's your old-fashioned spies, boots on the ground, learn the language, Ethan Hunt. kind of stuff, Mission Impossible stuff, and signals intelligence. And we live in a signals intelligence world. Now, Craig, interesting tidbit. Jimmy Carter, when he was president, the head of the CIA was Stansfield Turner. And Jimmy Carter was basically run by a bunch of Beltway swamp insiders, military intelligence complex insiders. And Turner basically gutted the CIA humans. And they said, no, it's all about signals intelligence. It's all about spying. And what was up and running for 6 years at that time? Pine Gap.
Yep.
Totally blew up in Carter's face. The intelligence community completely rebelled against him, was very, very angry. And I think that contributed to them in getting in bed with Ronald Reagan, who made all kinds of promises for money and resources and struck the deal to keep the Iranian hostages in the embassy there in Iran until just after the election, just until Ronald Reagan took office. So they spent, I think, 4 extra months in prison because Carter was working on a deal. Oh, what do you got here, dude?
I'm doing a terrible job typing here at the same time. I'm trying to give everybody, these are some of the names, like when people are looking at these things. I'm just going to space them out here. These are the different, if you want to look these up in your own time. So here, I fixed the comment. You've got the British complex, you've got Minworth Hill, you got the donut. The donut is the major complex because it's a ring shaped. That's why you get Fort Meade. You've got Southern Cross Cable is one of the major, information highways. The Utah Data Center, Bad Abilene Station, the Dagger Complex, and then the GCHQ. I think it's Bud. I think it's how you say it. But
cool.
Yeah, those are the different locations, and so people can look those things up too.
Nice.
Those are all tied in.
So, Craig, you mentioned a couple things that I want to revisit. You mentioned the National Security Agency as storing all of this. Mm-hmm. The data that resides on NSA servers is the property of that agency and is subject to U.S. legislation such as the Patriot Act. Now, folks, they say Patriot Act and you go, oh, chest thumping, flag waving. USA Patriot Act is an acronym. And I want to educate everybody tonight because it seems appropriate. Uniting and strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. I don't know who knows that. Craig, I'm confident you knew that.
Yes.
USA Patriot, all in caps when it's written out correctly, an acronym. Here's the problem. Who decides what terrorism is? Who's a terrorist? And who decides what the appropriate tools are to intercept and obstruct? That's the problem.
That's where all the fine print comes in, and that's where, like those secret FISA courts that you look into, it's the revised, which is now the USA Freedom Act, which was passed in 2015. It was kind of the update. But those are the ones that I said they look at those things. They'll say right on, in the beginning, this shows, that how the book collection must be made. That's just all pomp and circumstance and stuff. If you actually read the fine print, it's the same thing. Like I was just saying, it's they have all these loopholes to get around the stuff. It just simply has, keywords, you type in a keyword, well, that suddenly flags. We're not actively surveilling you. We're just keeping a log of this happen. Right. Well, there's a reason why they've got this massive storage facility out in the middle of nowhere, that's burning through gallons of water a second. I mean, this thing's a massive storage facility, and it's everyday conversations. It's like phone calls, text messages, emails. It's just everything is kept. And then if there's ever a thing, they go right back and they can put it all together. And it's like the Matrix. The agents show up with your big old portfolio and fold it out in front of you.
That's where that social credit score is going to come into play in a couple years. So let's talk about something real quick here while we're talking about all this that sort of has gone away, and people really should pay attention to it, and that's 5G. 5G is a very, very, very narrow wavelength. It has to be repeated every 100 feet. So in a full 5G system, they're using our phones as basically signal repeaters. Well, as that signal is passing through your phone with the right technology, it can scoop that shit right up. And the infrastructure for it is in these places that we're talking about.
And it's funny, just the way you laid it out there, because I know you're big with predictive programming.
Yeah.
Does everybody remember the scene from Dark Knight where he went in there and it was the phone? It was basically used as a version of echolocating.
Yeah.
So you have, I think that was Dark Knight. It might have been the sequel. I want to say it was Dark Knight that did it, but it was the thing. They used the phones, and it came into the play where something like Five Eyes. So me, Joey, Tanya, Charles, we're all in a room together. They're using these phones, and then what they can do is they can literally in real time see where people are, in all these locations, because they've shown the tech.
Yeah.
That they can put something out, and the vibration of your window is enough for them to hear in real time. They don't even have to have a microphone inside the room now. They can just, the vibrations that are caused on the windows is enough for them to figure out, for them to actually in real time hear what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there are millions of people out there that are so enamored of their video games and so enamored of high def streaming that if you go, yeah, we got to use your equipment as a repeater signal in order to make this happen. They're like, yeah, do whatever you want as long as I can get my TV show, as long as I can get the new season of, whatever the hell. So very, very interesting. You mentioned the Freedom Act, also an acronym. Using and strengthening America. Using America. No, uniting. Sorry. I keep the screen real dark so I don't have a glare on my glasses for y'all. Uniting and strengthening America by fulfilling rights and ensuring effective discipline over monitoring. That is a mouthful, my man. Fulfilling rights and ensuring effective discipline over monitoring.
Now, this is a little side note, just like thing. Do you think they come up with the name first and then they figure out the words later?
Oh,
like I just want to call like a USA Freedom Act, and then you're like, okay, now I got to figure out, okay, F's is going to stand for, R is going to stand for, because I'm like, just the thing that they're coming up with this and they're like, wait a minute, that says freedom. Oh my God, that's amazing. USA Freedom. Yeah, no, it just seems like it's the other way around.
Yeah. Nuclear physics facilities are famous for it. They use like Egyptian gods and goddesses, and I think you and Brian have talked about that on your show before. I know actually that you have. Yeah, I've been watching when you did. Now you can get probably ChatGPT to do it. I was working on a project where I was using a bunch of famous cryptids. And I said to ChatGPT, can you give me genus and species for these if I give you a description of them? And they said, sure. So that's probably how it's done today. A lot of this now is getting into AI. Lori's asking here, have you ever seen how they ID and follow you in the airports? Yeah, that's a bad place, and especially bad for women. They do it everywhere. They say the average American is photographed 14 times a day without them knowing. We're doing it voluntarily.
Oh, yeah. We've got this, and then there's people, when you go through, they've got the traffic monitoring cameras.
Yes. Yeah. Todd and I just pointed those out yesterday.
Yeah, they're there. Most people have seen their little white dome. The ones up on top or to register, like the vehicles. But the one, you'll see the ones that just have the little stick out and they got the dome on there. Yeah, those are for traffic monitoring, but it's the same thing. If there's ever an issue, it's amazing how they always have that footage of here comes a car just flying through the intersection. When somebody said, have you seen this car? Well, that's how they're getting this stuff. They've got it all recorded. And that's where we said the loopholes.
Yeah.
It's a traffic monitoring system. No, it's going to the NSA. They're keeping tabs where everything is at all times.
Yep.
Through Echelon and through other programs.
Yeah. It's crazy. So who's involved on the Australian side They really got the short end of the stick on this, and maybe the CIA killed Holt in order to make it happen. But Australian Signals Directorate, it is called, is involved in the facility's operations. But like we said, like the first 20 years, they weren't even allowed in the analysis room. But it also has a number of intelligence employees, not just from the CIA, not just from the NRO, not just from the NSA, but all, 3 out of the 4 branches of the military, Army, Navy, and Air Force. Or I should say, Craig, 3 out of the 5.
Yeah.
Because there's the Space Force, the mockery of Star Trek. The facility plays a significant role in intelligence gathering. I'm just going to read this stuff for you guys because it's a little complex. Primarily in the fields of signal intelligence, which I said, but also satellite surveillance. So that was a very, very big deal. And communications. Also missile defense. And it contributes to the global surveillance network of the United States and its allies. Interesting phrase, Craig. Global surveillance network.
That's just it. It's complete sharing, and that's where, when you have the CIA, everybody's watched the shows. Jack Ryan, they always show the big computer rooms where everybody's like, bring me up on that. They're looking up and they bring. That's actually what they can do. That in real time, if they were wanting to track Joey when he walked out there, they could actually physically go, give me traffic camera on this one. Give me they could bring up, they'll bring up the come on, ATM. Why that was so hard.
Oh, yeah.
They'll bring up the ATM cameras. They'll bring up, the grocery store cameras. They'll bring it up all in real time as he travels. And so they're actually keeping track. And then eventually they'll have an aerial vehicle up in the air to do the aerial shots. But yeah, they can do all this just at a click. If somebody calls, I need contact right now, where's Craig? They can sit here.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's going to start popping. They'll be able to see where I was at. I was in Walmart shopping before the show. They're going to be able to bring all this stuff up. They're going to watch me walk out the door, drive off. They're going to be able to bring all this stuff up in real time. Yeah. And so a lot of people will say, well, I'm not doing anything wrong now. But the next person is one that can determine that you are doing something wrong. And now you're on the opposite side. That's why it's that double-edged sword.
And that's what my 3 kids say. They go, look, yeah, Google's spying on us. The phones are spying on us. Everything's spying on us. We're not doing anything wrong. The thing is, who determines what you're doing wrong? Who you're talking to? What you're lingering over? What your opinions might be? That's the thing. So listen, I need to make a correction. The 5 Eyes is the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Not France. France is probably part of the 9 Eyes.
Yeah, I think I can get you that list if you want.
Yeah. So now the CIA has developed the signal intelligence satellites that intercept ballistic missile, test telemetry, and microwave telecommunications. So that's why it was originally started, to monitor Russia's development of nuclear weapons. And they still have their thing in it. What's interesting is you have the National Reconnaissance Office, then you have the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, you have the National Security Agency, but these are CIA-developed satellites. So sometimes I think people don't appreciate just how many fingers CIA has in so many things. When we do get to the UFO segment, this comes into play. So please remember this. So,
and that's one that you just brought up too. A lot of people don't realize. Everybody says like the president of the United States is the leader of the free world. When you actually get down to it, the CIA director is probably one of the most powerful people on the planet.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people don't when you look into this information, you realize just the things that when the CIA director gets up, they can move geopolitical mountains by moving pieces. And it's, the president has things in, but the CIA director can literally, on a whim, could assassinate a world leader.
Yeah.
Without any oversight.
Nowhere was that truer than George H.W. Bush.
Mhm.
I think truly in American history, possibly the most powerful man over decades.
Oh,
Over decades.
I would agree.
And I think if they would have done it again, they probably would not have had him stand for president. That didn't work out so great. That sort of weakened him in a way. And then they had to, use his entire cabal, Cheney and Rumsfeld, all those other people with his son to kind of do some of the things they needed to do. So this was incredibly, incredibly, incredibly secret, folks, for about the first 40 years. But then in 2013, it was revealed that data collected by the Pine Gap facility was used for geolocation and targeting purposes for drone use by the U.S. military in sovereign states such as Yemen and Pakistan. Craig, it is one of the greatest ironies to me that Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
Because that dude authorized assassination by drone of over 200 people.
Yeah, I know. He was actually, when it comes down to presidents, he got us into more conflicts and more, like actual military engagements than I think since FDR. And that was World War II. I mean, so obviously that's saying something. I mean, when you're talking about, we went into places. I mean, everybody criticized Clinton for what he did in former Yugoslavia.
Mm-hmm.
Their thing that was kindergarten school compared to what the Obama administration did. I mean, they literally did regime change after regime change.
Yep.
And so and a lot of people don't realize just that's the thing. I got to quit saying that. I mean, keep watching the show. You will realize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get there. We'll get there over time.
There.
Yeah, like Charles says, perhaps GHWB just got bored doing open stuff. There was something, I'm old enough to remember his re-election campaign. At a certain point, it was clear he just gave up. He just stopped trying to get elected. And I think it became clear in the larger, where the decisions are made, that Clinton was the guy. That was the way it needed to go. And that was that.
Here's a theory. I'll throw that out and see what people in the chat and everybody think. What if the reason he became president was simply to lock down any inquisition into his dealings? Because now they would be considered national security, presidential, that you would be able to claim presidential, authority over this information. And that way you couldn't actually, even with Snowden, even anybody coming out with stuff, now you can't dig any further because this is actually locked down with presidents.
That is whoa. This is why it's such a privilege to do this show with you. Seriously, that makes so much sense. And you know what's funny? Presidents didn't talk about that until Trump, who talked about it every 6 minutes. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm the president, so you can't. And I'm the president, I can do this. And I'm the president, I can declassify shit. Like, presidents don't talk about that. They don't talk about They decide what goes out and what doesn't go out. And because Clinton, was always like, oh, I couldn't get my hands on this stuff I really wanted about the UFOs, and they wouldn't tell me anything. They won't give me anything. Meanwhile, Trump is saying, yeah, that's brilliant, dude. Absolutely brilliant.
So that's
here we go.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because then there would be certain, because then it falls under a whole different. It's not just a random, you and me can't FOIA request. I want to know where Bush was on this thing. Sorry, national security. There's nothing you can do. It's literally locked down.
Do you know where I mentioned this on the show before, but do you know where HW was the night that Reagan or the afternoon that Reagan the assassination attempt? Do you know where he was?
I actually don't. Yeah, I don't.
He was meeting with the head of World Vision, who was Hinckley's father. Wow. I mean, that's the arrogance. That's the arrogance. Yeah, I think I mentioned on on the show before.
Because that's basically just that literally is just showing it's like now it's everything's even, and then that was just way out in the open. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, play ball or
Yep.
pow pow.
I think it's also part of their ritualistic nature that you have to call your shot. Like they seem to derive some kind of pleasure about being a cult out in the open, or doing certain things like that. I've sort of come to that. That's part of their routine.
That's an interesting theory too, because it's that'd be something definitely to go through. I mean, to see if through these things, if through history, if a lot of the stuff comes down to somebody that was involved in that group was tied to somebody, it was basically just like out in the open, it's like you're basically what's the Judas, you're getting the kiss, type thing before. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing to me. And it really started with the second Bush regime, where they were just so obvious about what they were doing. And they were so arrogant. And they're just, in a 24-hour news cycle, you have this giant machinery to track people's responses. What lingers? What do people notice? Does anybody really give a crap what Grush said about, we have the ships. Yeah, we have alien bodies. It didn't grind anything to a halt. But of course, a third of our country is covered in smoke. People are back to wearing masks. They're closing down Broadway. They're canceling sporting events. My daughter with asthma had to cancel her doctor's appointment yesterday because she couldn't leave the house. So there's so many other things going on that you can float these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're definitely, distract them, and then you can get stuff in place.
Yeah, I mean it's an amazing, amazing game that they're playing. Pine Gap was significantly expanded about 8 years ago, 2015, into a quote unquote multi-purpose mega intelligence center. So it has really evolved over the years of what it's for, what it's capable of. And again, we're moving more and more from human to SIGINT, signals intelligence, and then, of course, the presence of AI, quantum computing power. You can crunch all this data because you have the computing power to do it. So in 2017, through a website called The Intercept, which I believe, I don't want to get this wrong, so let me just look at my notes here for a second, Craig. Sorry to hold things up.
Sound like you just broke something.
No, I just my little note stand fell, but luckily
for anybody that's watched the documentary Terminator, that's you watch these things that it's almost like you can watch it happen. It's happening in real time.
Yeah.
Between Boston Dynamic, you've got places like Pine Gap and these things that are going almost automated.
Yeah.
Where they're giving these AI systems complete directive on finding the information, locating the target, sending the assets, drones and stuff to observe these targets. I mean, we're right on the doorstep of Skynet.
Yeah. And it can't seem to get a straight answer about it. I think we're going to know a lot, what they put out publicly. That's another thing I think that people aren't aware of. Oh, I can take my face and put it into a music video, and I can upload my voice, and maybe they'll use me for voice talent. All this stuff, read the fine print. They're gathering facial imagery. They're gathering tremendous amounts of voice data. Why do they do nice closed captioning for Nobodies Like Us, Craig, on YouTube? Because it's a way for that listening to come and turn audio into text, looking for keywords.
They still got to work on it a little bit, because there's some of the words I see go down there and I'm like, that's not what I said.
But the ones that count, the ones they're looking for, are pretty clear. So like Kissinger, like
exactly.
Five Eyes. And so the Intercept, I believe, Leslie Keane and Ralph Blumenthal, this story about Grush, that I'll get to in a little bit. That's the same place that broke the story about Edward Snowden and NSA. So the Intercept certainly has its pulse. Yeah, Charles is asking, are you bringing in the new UFO whistleblower? Yes, we are bringing that in, Charles. We have to. But we're waiting just a little bit longer. There were pictures of Hinckley with Bush's kids. He was a family friend. There you go. It isn't just made up. It's out there. It's crazy.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, is that they're pretty brazen in the fact that they know they can do it, and you're just not really going to pay attention.
Yeah, and who suffers? Baker, who winds up paralyzed in a wheelchair for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Or the governor that got hit.
Well, that's just
who then switched sides, right? Sorry, I'm getting ahead of things. We're going everywhere tonight. But the larger the tapestry's getting, the more complicated.
Well, that's just it. It's I've had a discussion, and I'm not gonna drop names, with a few people the last couple of days, and one of the first things out of their mouth was, I don't believe that. I'm like, what part of history do you not believe? You have to look in history. You can sit there and say the government would never do something like this. I mean, how far do you want me to go back? Do you want me to go back to the Trail of Tears? Do you want me to go back to the internment of the Japanese, the internment of the Italian? How far back do the Tuskegee experiments on black men, giving them STDs to see what happens? How many things do you have to show to people that the government doesn't care if 20 people die?
Right.
It doesn't if it furthers the agenda that they want something to happen, they're going to easily spend somebody to create some atrocity, because then it gives them, that was one of the things that you brought up, Obama thing. That was one of the greatest mistakes that administration made, is they pulled back the curtain and let us see what the wizard that was behind, who the actual wizard was. And you realize that it wasn't the president, it wasn't the Secretary of State, it was the person behind the scenes creating, the rule book that was doing all the regulations. That was who was really steering things. Don't forget the phrase, never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah.
That was the stuff that they did. And that's one of the things and they showed that's what government does. They like to cause a crisis. And then once the crisis is there, then the majority of people, they don't take the time to figure out why the crisis might have occurred. They're just, oh my God, make it stop.
Right.
Like right now, the fire's going on. There's conspiracy theories, they were intentionally set. They were doing these things. Well, okay, let's say it was done. Well, why would they do it? What's going on right now? Everybody is crying, please, somebody do something, make this stop. I'm suffering. That's exactly what they want. That's where these agencies come into play, CIA stuff. They create these scenarios, destabilization. Why? Because they have the solution already in hand, and they just simply roll it out. Don't think the healthcare, 2,000-page Healthcare Act just showed up overnight. That was sitting on a desk waiting to be rolled out. And as soon as the opportune moment came out, they wheeled out, I have the solution.
Yep. Exactly right. And that whole game plan goes all the way back to the Roman Empire. Pretext. That's what that is. All you need is a pretext, and you're good. Then you're the heroes rolling in. So Charles said, in Dallas, Connolly's wife cried out, oh my God, they're going to kill us all. Interesting thing about Connolly, and I think I brought this up 2 or 3 weeks ago. Connolly switched parties. He left the Democratic Party, became a Republican. He was one of the key guys, along with his deputy governor, who went to the Middle East and brokered the deal for Reagan to hold on to the hostages. Now, that's very interesting. Did he feel like his party tried to kill him and he was so embittered, that he was collateral damage, that he switched sides and then really went to bat for the Republicans? Nobody cares about that, right? 4 extra months those people stayed in. And it was another way, Craig, to steal an election, because if Jimmy Carter would have brought those people home, he would have been reelected.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely would have helped. I said, there definitely would have been a cause for it. And that's one of those things too. Just like what I just got done with my little soapbox thing, that's another one of those things. Do you really think the U.S. government cared about those hostages?
Oh no,
No,
obviously
they instantly became a political pawn. It's just like anything else. I mean, it's just you can go down the list. Homelessness in California, fires in can. These are all political tennis balls now that are being. They're going to go back and forth. They're going to be used to show. We're going to be talking about, UFO stuff. The same thing. These are little things that are thrown out there. Just they're used as political. They don't care about the chaos that it causes.
No.
The more chaos, the better it is for them.
Yeah. And while we're on a roll tonight, think about other embassy situations where people were used as pawns. Benghazi. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we could doctor. We've been talking about that one. That's a little underknown thing where it was the same thing. We were arming both sides.
Yeah. That's U.S. political problem. Yeah.
And the news saw, you've got these things. I mean, we saw reasons why, one of the possible reasons why we left all that equipment in Afghanistan. Reports came out last week that the Taliban is using that equipment and threatening to, go after Iran on their, in their territory over a water dispute. Well, who does that benefit?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
the great goes back to Teddy Roosevelt, right? The police of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And handing out candy in the forms of firepower. So that same year, 2017, Trump accelerated the use of drones while eating chocolate cake. Yep. And this becomes very interesting. This loops back to Holt. That was the true brilliance of Donald Trump, dude, where they dropped the mega bomb and he's eating chocolate cake and he's like, oh, I really kind of like this. We'll do it again. It's very cool. And the dude is just snacking on chocolate cake. And the rest of the world went, oh my God, he's a certified madman. And like everybody got into line.
Yeah, they realized that we actually cannot predict what he's going to do.
No, it was genius. It was absolute genius. And we may get another round of it, man. I don't know. But anyway, so in 2017, he takes office. He has a very contentious, when you take office, you have to call all the countries and have these conversations. Well, his first phone call with Malcolm Turnbull, the Prime Minister of Australia, was extremely contentious. Can't imagine Trump being contentious with anyone. He berated his Australian counterpart over the terms of a refugee deal, abruptly ended the call, describing it as ridiculous and unpleasant. Some partner you got this giant mega facility in their country, and you're calling the guy ridiculous and hanging up on him. Can you imagine that? Like, screw you, I'm done.
Yeah, and that's what you said earlier too. Is this thing, with the Australians, they're actually getting so much benefits from this thing. I mean, this is such, all this money's being just poured into the country for these facilities. I mean, look at Alice Springs. That would not be there. Yeah. Let's be honest. If it was not for the American dollar coming towards that thing, none of that would be there. It'd be a little stagecoach stop.
Yeah.
Out in the middle of, Australia. And so I think that's one of the things, like, that, it comes to the arrogance in a way to us where it's like, look what I'm doing for you. You're going to jump when I say jump. And they're like, well, no, it's like, it's like, oh, really? Click. You're not worried about that part.
Right. And true enough, but it's amazing how much it comes to bite us in the ass. So when and again, it's the spy stuff. When Carter was in office and they were making the deal with Pakistan, they needed Pakistan to be like a listening station. They were giving jet planes to this Pakistani leader who started dictating terms. Like, he caught on and went, oh, they don't need this. They really need it. So I'm going to push it as far as I can. And that really kind of bit.
Because he was the one in power during Bush, right?
Oh, yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
I just, his name's failing me. I know he was the one. He had like the dictator look. He always wore the military.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know who you're talking. I can't think of his name right now. Charles probably knows it.
I'm no, not Yaha Khan, right? Or was it?
No.
I'll
look it.
I forget too. Yeah. I put Pakistan leader 1970s. Who's president of Pakistan in 1970? Okay. See if you can.
Yes. Is that President Yaha Khan?
Yeah, maybe it was.
Yeah.
That's what I said. But
Yeah.
I thought it was different. So maybe it was the head of the military. Because the name's not ringing a bell with me. But anyway, we told you, watch out. They're collecting phone calls, emails, electronic transmissions, focused on signals intelligence activities in the Asia Pacific region. So when you look at pictures, and Craig always does an outstanding job of the banners, which then we cover up with our faces as we're talking here. There are 38 radar dishes on this facility, concealed beneath golf ball-like shells. Look, we burned an hour, but I would like to mention just some of the UFO stuff because it's kind of interesting. Yes. You mind?
Nope. So do you want to start with the Pine Gap connection, or do you want to just jump into what the current stuff that's going on?
I kind of want to start with the current. I want to start with the current stuff because before people go, oh, it's all BS, and Area 51, there's no UFOs. There's no UFOs at Pine Gap. I would just like to remind the audience that there are very high-level people. Okay, this guy David Charles Grush, 36 years old, decorated former combat officer in Afghanistan, veteran of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and the National Reconnaissance Office. Pay attention. These are major players at Pine Gap. And this guy was involved with these guys. He says that we have parts and whole ships of non-human origin. He says it sounds crazy, but sometimes when these ships land or crash, there are pilots, and we have the pilots. This suddenly makes Varginha Brazil and the James Fox story, Area 51 and Jackie Gleason and Richard Nixon. All of a sudden, these stories, right, the tiny coffins that were loaded on the plane, in Texas, all this stuff linking together, parallels, patterns, creating pathways. At the NGA, Grush served as Senior Intelligence Capabilities Integration Officer. Intelligence Capabilities Integration. Sounds like it might have to do with Pine Gap kind of things. Cleared at top secret compartmented information available. There's that compartmentalization that Bob Lazar was talking about, 50 years ago, right? Was an agency senior technical advisor for unidentified aerial phenomena, now known, if you'll remember, as identified anomalous phenomena, and transmedium issues. Transmedium is a ship that can, the anti-grav, electrogravimetrics, all of that kind of stuff. Also, too, that can go in and out of the water, out of the sky. That's also transmedium. Okay. From 2016 to 2021, he served with the National Reconnaissance Office as Senior Intelligence Officer and led the production of their director's daily briefing. And in 2019, he was part of the UAP task force. He was a GS-15 civilian when he left in April, but is about the equivalent of a colonel. He left, like Lou Elizondo, on a zealot's disclosure mission. Interesting. Although he has continued backing from all these people. Now, I'll tell you what's interesting to me. Of course, Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal were two of the three people that in 2017 delivered the news on behalf of the military-industrial complex about ATIP. They were the messengers. They didn't break a story. I'm convinced of it. They were fed it because it was the right time, whatever they're working for. Craig, you want to add anything to all of this? Current events?
It was really funny. I mean, I started posting those ones on our page too, there, Three Beers Podcast. It was because it was like one after another just started popping up. And you had that whistleblower one, and then you had the same one because he was, we worked on secret U.S. government to rebuild the crashed UFOs. That one came out, I think it was like the very the day of or the next day, as that one came out about the U.S. intelligence officials saying that we've recovered the crafts, and these were coming out. So I don't know if this falls into play of the advanced disclosure that's coming. Like we're going to start getting more and more of these type of things coming out, talking about this stuff. But the one thing that they seem to have a commonality of, they never, like Lou Elizondo, these guys, they never seem to deal in, concrete specifics.
Right.
It's kind of like the fortune teller that you go pay, gives you a thing. You are going to come into an amazing thing somewhere in the future. You're like, okay, what does that mean? It's going to happen soon. Well, what does this mean? If you're in the know and you truly are a whistleblowing, you should be able to give something more, than just a generalized thing. I mean, it's what most people do that predict, make predictions. They give you a generalized, somewhere in the future, this is going to occur. It's kind of like Nostradamus. Yes, he did the thing, but he never really ever gave concrete, it will happen on this. He gave kind of a pattern, but it was the same way. It's like these things, like Lou Elizondo. At some point, you're going to have to give me more than a generalization.
Right. And that's, I guess, what they're coming to. So a couple weeks ago, when we did the Secret Space program, we gave you an update on disclosure. I told you that in April, Sean Kirkpatrick, who's head of APRO, right, the latest UFO research panel group, that's what they're called now, the AAPO. He said, we've looked at 650 military cases. There's no evidence of anything here. Then a couple weeks later, Gary Nolan, right, pathologist at Stanford University, who's become a major talking head about all this stuff, goes, I'm 100% certain that we've been visited. We've been visited a long time. We have the ships. There was whistleblower testimony that really created a hornet's nest in Washington. Well, that was this Grush stuff that now comes out. In the midst of all this, what else happens? There's the 16-member panel of NASA who's looking at only civilian cases, because you have to keep up the mythology that NASA is not a military organization.
Yeah.
It was founded by a frickin' SS Nazi. It's a military organization. Their Air Force personnel are astronauts, right?
I mean, it's silly not to. I don't know.
So that was May 31st, and the head of that 16-member panel says, I want to say loud and proud, there is no evidence. Why would you say loud and proud? You're NASA, for Christ's sake. Like you'd say, why wouldn't you say, we're disappointed to say we still haven't had any success? So you have all these organizations within the Beltway, so to speak, and elsewhere, contradictory. You have the Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellencamp versus the Stephen Greer camp. Oh, what is Stephen Greer up to? Yesterday, he drops a brand new documentary. I paid the $15 to see it the day it came out so that I could keep you guys all abreast. And this is all about, it's called The Lost Century. And his trend now is about guys like Stan Meyer, who we've talked about on this show. All these guys that had alternative energy sources. Tesla, all these different people. Watch the documentary. He gives a list of all of them. A lot of them came to really bad ends. They were assassinated. They were poisoned. They disappeared. They died under mysterious circumstances. That we already have this technology. So, Craig, that's where I'm finding it. So he's, June 12th, Greer's talking to the National Press Club, talking about whistleblower testimony. You have Grush, who's the face of the ultimate whistleblower testimony, and he announces yesterday, please tell Stephen Greer to stop using my name for his own personal agenda. So it's fascinating.
Which is weird.
Yeah, and I think I said this on the show 2 or 3 weeks ago. I am really convinced now that it's black hats versus black hats. You and I
Mhm.
and people at our level, we're the white hats. We're not getting paid. We have no skin in the game. We have no sponsors. We're not trying to get tenure. We're not trying to get government laboratory money. I couldn't figure out Gary Nolan coming out, being the spokesperson, talking with Avi Loeb and all these people and doing the circuit and going, yeah, I'm 100% sure. I've studied. I've spoken to the people who have seen the machines and worked on them. But the pieces all fell into place for me today in this Leslie Keane article. Basically, he's an inventor entrepreneur. And what he's really been talking about the past 3 weeks is if we can reverse engineer, look how we could push things forward. So he's got a piece. He's got a piece of the patents. That's what he's in it for. So, you know, why the hell do you and I do this? I mean, there's no pure motivations. But we're on a bit of a mission. What Reverend
fun of it.
Reverend, what's that?
I said for the fun of it.
Yeah, Reverend Carter calls it our ministry. We're preaching.
Well, my biggest thing is it's a passion to me. I encourage a lot of people. It's like there's ones like I know things seem bad out there a lot of time right here, but one of the worst things you can do is focus on the negative. It's like, you know it. It's just, you know, I'm a huge cinephile, so I quote movies all the time. The Matrix. Most people do not want to wake up.
Right.
So one of the worst things you can do is go around, why won't anybody listen to me? It's like, if you have a conviction, just, you know, prepare yourself, you know, be normal. You know, you don't have to start practicing drinking your own urine. So that way I'm ready for when it happens. You know, you don't have to go these extremes, you know, for these things. Just be ready. You know, like I said, with disclosure, we're paying attention to it. If it happens, cool. If it doesn't happen, we can have an amazing laugh at all the people that were so passionate, you know, behind the Elizondos and, you know, these people. And you can look back and it's like, God, remember when people were unfriending people because you dared to question the Lou? You know, you can have fun, but when you get so involved, so deeply ingrained in the thing that you take things personally, that's when it's like, you got to take a step back, have fun, discuss it. Like I said, did we just stop Pine Gap in this discussion? No, but we brought people awareness to it. They actually can, oh, well, you know, they can start looking into it, and now you can education. So if something ever comes back, you can drop us some information. You can find a thing. It's a good exercise, but it's not something to sit here and stress and worry yourself to death over. It's
right.
You know, like somebody, you know, virtually sitting next to me, you know, enjoy the creative cottage and build the garden. Just move forward with the life. I said, you basically control your own orbit.
Yeah,
that's basically all you can do. I mean, we can all sit here and worry about when's that comet going to smack us and the thing, but how about we just involve and just try to focus on the revolution around the fireball, you know, and just, you know, and just one of the things. It's like, don't do the whole party while Rome is burning type thing, but it's just at the same time, it's like, we don't have to sit here and point out every single fire. We know it's burning.
Yeah. Keep your priorities straight. That's what I say to Tanya all the time. Yeah. As long as we focus on our expanding circle, and Craig, you're pretty close to the center circle, I have to tell you. So let's end on a fun note. Let's call this a fun note. Okay, let's call this a fun note. Because it took me days to find UFO info about Pine Gap. Because it's just scrubbed. It's just not out there on the internet. But these two girls, Josie and Melissa, Australians, they have this show. Guys, check it out. It's called the All Aussie Mystery Hour, and they like zesty stuff. Oh, go ahead, Craig. Do a plug.
Oh, no. I just do this like throughout the show every now and then, since we're both on there. I'll just occasionally.
No, that's good. So you can listen to the show 3 weeks from now,
like a UFO
10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On ERT Radio. Thank you to Ronald. And then following our show, and when we do Sinister Mysteries, you get like probably almost 3 hours of Mr. Ansel, because there's three beards, you know, follows us. So we're the warm-up band.
I want to get the Whitley Strieber just like that. Band. Yeah, I want to be Whitley Strieber. I want that alien. So like right behind me on that curtain, I just want it to sit here and just kind of peek out, and then just figure out some way to have it come back. I got to figure out some way to do that.
Well, we'll
Yes,
find out.
but anyway,
We'll
talk
find
about those
out.
ladies.
Yeah. So let's do this and take it home. Pine Gap may be involved in the study and research of unidentified flying objects. Here's what ChatGPT tells us about Pine Gap. It's important to note that the information about Pine Gap is limited due to its secretive nature, and much of what is publicly known is based on speculation, leaked documents, and investigative journalism. The facility remains highly classified, and specific details about its operations and capabilities are not publicly disclosed. So, with that said, there are rumors of weather machines that operate at Pine Gap. And the development of super soldiers. Now, before you poo-poo the whole super soldier thing, remember that there's DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and a very well-respected Washington Post journalist named Annie Jacobson, who wrote a book called The Pentagon's Brain about DARPA. I've turned so many people onto this book because it's mind-blowing. Super soldiers, part of it. Okay. The most far out thing, I'm going to get it out of the way. Although Craig, our Red Thread Collective, and we got to try to get the band back together at some point for a few shows. The Red Thread Collective did a show on Antarctica. So when I say that perhaps Pine Gap is a multi-dimensional portal with access to Mars, on one hand, it's perhaps laughable, but we did a whole 90 minutes on Antarctica possibly being, amongst other things, a multi-dimensional portal with access to Mars or the moon. So there you go. I don't know. This is interesting. There have been reports of UFOs. They hover over the base. Okay. Now, two reports 20 years apart have the same information. I pay attention to that. A blue beam comes down from a disc into the facility. The beam disappears, and a few minutes later, a blue beam comes up from the facility into the disc. It's interesting that it's a blue beam for two reasons. Project Bluebeam, right, where we may have the fake. So what is all this disclosure nonsense coming to? They might be wanting to roll out Project Bluebeam. So folks, if there is an alien attack report, watch the footage, be calm, be collective. Try to reach your friends who are in that area to actually ask them what's going on, and maybe we can keep them from getting away with something major. Blue beam is also interesting, Craig, because a blue beam is what knocked Travis Walton out. His famous abduction, and the theory is he got too close to the craft. The beam injured him, and that's why they brought him up into the ship to fix him, to repair him. So that's one of the theories.
Yeah, no. I was just say it's definitely those are the ones, like some of the stories that are pretty interesting. That I like to listen to, and I really like to something like that where it's clearly they saw something, that something went down, disappears, then something comes back up to the same object, and then what that flies away. Those ones are pretty compelling ones that are a lot. It's not just I saw a fuzzy orb over a tree and then it disappeared. Okay, right. Well, it could be a helicopter. I mean, there's a lot of things it could be.
Right. Ingo Swann, though, talked about them going over lakes, remote viewing them going over lakes and sucking up huge amounts of water. So this kind of connection with the ground. So maybe Chernikov radiation, that could explain it, Charles said. So let me take you through this real quickly. This was in 1973, the first thing with the blue beam shining into the base. 1975, a private plane flies over. A large white object leaves the base at a high rate of speed. The people from the plane reported to the authorities, and they get a visit, and they're told to forget it. Something about this large white object, and there was another incidence of these white bathtub-like things, Craig, coming out of a camouflage door in the desert. Kind of reminds me of the Tic Tac. And you're of the mind that Tic Tac is ours, right? It's not off-world.
Because for me, just it really speaks to something like DARPA would work on. Yeah. Because just when you think of just, even just like humanity think, just what would be the purpose of building a craft that's shaped like a tic tac? I mean, it would just be, it's a weird shape. Just
Yeah.
it's just most thing like space things. I mean, just anybody that's been even like those airstreams, there's that wasted space, that curve. There's not really a lot you can do in that curve. And so when it comes to things, those kind of curves are just kind of a really weird usage of, space stuff. So I don't know. I mean, to me, it just seems more like it would just for the aerodynamic purpose, or whatever it was. It just, I don't know. I mean, it's
Right. Apparently, and Mark Fiorentino is going to be on the show next week, sort of our resident physics expert. But the cigar shaped or the tic tac shaped, that they have these rings that create this anti-gravity that goes through from end to end of the ship and creates the sort of field around it, the fuzzy blur field, which could explain that. I don't know, but that's his thesis. 1983, 3 hunters. Right, so this is the missing 411 hunters that see weird things because they're in unpredictable places. They find a hidden camouflage door in the desert terrain. It opens up out of nowhere, this camouflage door, and a metal gray disc flies out of it. That's what these 3. Charles says too. Magnetohydrodynamic fields create simple shapes. So there you go. 1992. This is kind of interesting. Men in Black visit the house of a boy they had given a device to 15 years earlier when he was 7. He has memories of time and UFOs, first a mix of humans and aliens. He goes to off-world bases. He went to Pine Gap during one of these experiences through a portal, emerged, and was in a large area where there were ships. This is like, Craig, that's like 20 and Back stuff, secret space program, where these kids are recruited early by these Men in Black type people. 1994, 5 witnesses report UFOs over Pine Gap. Now, one of the witnesses was getting insider information. People were saying, pay attention to Pine Gap, something's going to happen. And they were like, get in your cars, go right now, something weird's going on. So these 5 people pile in their cars. They see a pillar of light exit the base. A strange cloud forms. Somehow, Craig, I find this really compelling. A beam of light comes out of the base. This weird-ass cloud falls where the beam goes into, and then out of the cloud, 4 diamond-shaped and 1 cigar-shaped craft appears. And the cigar-shaped craft shoots a beam back down into the base.
Now, that pillar of fire and the pillar of smoke, does that sound familiar to anybody?
Oh, very biblical. Yeah. Plus, also, too, the 4 diamond and 1 cigar shape almost sounds like Solar Warden. The mothership and the scout ships.
Yeah, the triangles. Yep.
Yeah, there's just something so damn compelling about that. Shooting up a beam that opens up this cloud. And how many people have said, like, whoa, that cloud was weird, and then it turned into a UFO. Don't they do that in Nope?
Yep.
They do that in Nope.
Yeah, the cloud doesn't move. They're like, have you noticed that cloud never moves? And the creature, the UFO, for those, I'm not going to get into any more for they don't want to be spoilers,
right?
Is in the cloud.
We're getting dreadfully short on time here, but I just want to pull this all together. So what Grush is saying, what Nolan is saying, they're saying these ships exist. We have it. We can do these things. Ben Rich from Skunkworks said we can send ET home. Werner von Braun, said the 5th stage of world manipulation was going to be aliens. There's all this stuff. Then on Stephen Greer's 4th documentary, is the 5th one that just landed, he had a guy named John Ramirez on. Seems like a very credible, soft-spoken guy. He said the CIA has a history of investigating UFOs. More and more information is coming to light. Remember, the CIA oversaw and designed a lot of the equipment at Pine Gap. This is what John Ramirez said. He worked from the agency from 1984 to 2009. Now, he has the Central Intelligence Medal. Just like Grush, like everybody is going, this is a credible dude, right? Not like that general from Israel who they said, this guy's a cracker, he's out of his mind. Right? They're going, no, these people are credible. So Central Intelligence, he worked in electronic intelligence. During his time there, they picked up orbs using infrared sensors on satellites, spying on Russia. So where the F do you think these satellites were tied to? Probably Pine Gap, right? Yep. NRO, NGA, it all makes sense, Craig, right? National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. So I was right all night. That's great. So they first eliminate the possibility that they're Russian MiGs. Then they go to the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and they go, do you see these orbs too? And they go, yeah. They go, well, is it a software bug? No, it's not a software bug. It's legitimate. These orbs are there. So then they go to the National Reconnaissance Organization and they ask them to check their satellites. No malfunctions are reported. Then in the 1980s, USSR General Vasily Alexeyev claims that the Russian military was attracting these orbs with radar and communicating with them. I don't know. Is correlation causation? I don't know. But I think over all of these episodes, you and I together and some of the work I'm doing independently, I think we're starting to paint a picture that has some internal coherence. You know, and the more we learn, the more we have, okay, I watched that Greer documentary, so I knew about this thing with John Ramirez and the general, and then suddenly you go, oh, wait a minute, the CIA, the NRO, the NGA. Then you go, oh, let's check out Pine Gap. And suddenly CIA, NRO, NGA spying on Russia with satellites. And you go, holy shit. Like this overlays.
Yeah. And you start, you just start seeing and you're like, holy crap, this is, this actually, there is something to this.
So folks, we got to run. We took you to the very end on this, but I just want to say, I'm putting Craig on a little bit of hiatus because I'm going to be away, which is rare. And I'm doing some favors for some publicists to have some different kind of people on and mix these things up. But Craig, you are next going to be with us on July 27th, and we're going to do backmasking. This whole idea of backwards recordings. If I tell a lie, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I'm got to try to figure out, we threw around the idea of recording something and see, because it's quite something to where, in a way it's almost like when you say something, now you think about it, subconsciously, am I calling myself out on what I just said?
Right. I know it's going to be interesting. We are going to do,
No, it's like, so we'll get that, but people can look it up. But yeah, it's really interesting thing because it's supposedly if you record yourself and then you play it backwards, it will actually reveal what you really are trying to say.
Yep.
And it could be something like, "Hey, I love you, Mom. I hope everything's going good." And then you play it backwards. You're like, "Ah, can't wait to be done with this phone call."
Yep.
It's one of those things. It's really weird. It's like people do it, and it actually plays. It's like a truth. It's literally like a truth serum. It's kind of a cool phenomenon. So it'll be interesting to dive into that one.
And where did it originate? It originated in the CIA.
Yes.
This program. So we have I'm going to drop a bunch of things on you guys as we're shooting out. City 40, Project Azorian, right? Yep. 9/11. Hi Google.
Yes.
Hi NSA.
That's gonna be fun.
Hi Pinecap.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one.
9/11. That's going to be on September 7th. We're going to do the Federal Reserve. We're going to do the Kennedy assassinations. So rather than bits and pieces, we're really going to deep dive on that, including, Craig, the theory of the killing of the king at the 33rd parallel.
Yes.
Yeah, and Camelot and all of that. October 19th, the Radon Corporation. Then we got Montauk. We got Rendlesham. Rendlesham's coming up in really weird ways. Stephen Greer, in his latest documentary, he says that in Rendlesham, two beings came out and said, we are from like 50,000 years in the future or something like that, and you have to change your ways, otherwise, we're not going to exist. So he used that as a closer. I have never heard of beings. I only heard of the hieroglyphs and the binary.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things, because the time travel. I'm gonna have the time travel paradox. The thing, it's like, so obviously they do exist. So whatever we're doing right now, they are there.
Right.
So if they had never shown up, they'd still would exist. If a tree falls in the woods, doesn't make a sound. If nobody had been there to hear those creatures, nothing would have changed.
Right. And I also said to Tanya, if you're trying to motivate people to act, it's the wrong way to do it. Because if they came back in time to say, hey, you have to change your ways or we're not going to exist, the ways got changed.
Yep.
So why the hell do I have to do anything?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if we do what we're doing, you're going to exist. So, all right, peace out, creature.
Yep. And that's what Miss Tanya, who has been waiting in the shadows here, that's my issue with this statement about that. It just didn't hold water. If I want to compel everybody and go, listen, I got a message from me, our 1000th episode, and if you guys don't all give me stars on Facebook and send me a bunch of money on Patreon, I'm not going to make it to my 1000th episode. Well, obviously, I found a way to make it.
Yeah, you made it.
So nobody's going to give me money. So Laura Greenlee, friend of the show, says the Rendlesham account intrigues me. That's going to be a fascinating. That's going to be a fascinating episode. And along the way, guys, I'm going to sprinkle in my parallels, patterns, and pathways, talking about the UFOs over the decades. And I'm going to be starting with Ike and the aliens. Ike and the aliens. I think Eisenhower and this whole alien thing, I'm using it for a fiction project too. So we're going to become good chums.
There's some really interesting accounts when you get through there. A Warminster thing, there's some really interesting ones when you actually look at it. They're pretty cool how they when they come out. But then it's just you have the other one. It's just the whole debate. Where are they from? Are they from outer space? Are they us from the future? That's just the major debater of the whole thing.
Oh, cool. Did you know, Laura, I didn't know you were a content creator. You did a video on Ike. If you could send me a link to that video, I would love it, and I'll give you full credit when I'm doing my research. So if you could send that to me, Griata Treaty, how he disappeared for a day, supposedly blew out his tooth on a chicken bone. But if you listen to his granddaughter, Laura, she's really in the whole disclosure camp and says a lot of stuff. Oh, great. Yeah, that's okay, Laura. Whatever you made it for, I would love to see it. If you could send it to me or send me a link, that would be wonderful. So, folks, we're 2.5 minutes past time. Craig, I'm noticing that you and I are talking about more and more off the cuff and more freely, but I think the time has come. We certainly do our homework, so this is always a privilege, good sir.
I wear off on people.
So we will see you again July 27th, and then I have you consistently every 2 weeks.
I think so. Yes.
Toward almost the end of the year. So yeah, so folks, just bear with. I'm going to mix it up a little. I'm going to bring you some spiritual people. I'm going to bring you a woman when the horrific forest fires happened in California, and then the big mudslide. This woman lost half of her family. Also, tune into ERT Radio, sponsor of Three Beards Progress. Laura, we love you too. Thank you. You can watch this at your leisure. You can watch it on my Facebook page. You can watch it on my YouTube channel. And guys, you can watch it on Into the Outer Realms, but I'm still in prison from Tanya's hack. So Into the Outer Realms is being shadow banned. It's really hurting our numbers. People who normally watch the show through Into the Outer Realms. So if you happen to know anybody who watches the show, and believe it or not, it happens. I was working with somebody, Craig, on a project, and they said, oh, I was in Texas for something. And I mentioned I'm working with this guy and he does this podcast. And she was like, oh, yeah, Into the Outer Realms. I watch it. So,
really?
Yeah. So people actually, I know. Stunning. But it's true. Beyond our circle, people do listen. And
that's cool.
But they're not getting the notifications and all through Into the Outer Realms.
That's where it's Facebook like everybody, share. I mean, literally share it to your timeline. I mean, it's just, that's all you got to do. It takes so little time. And that's what actually helps, like, share, subscribe. Get
And
Joey over 1,000 subscribers on the Joey Medea page on YouTube.
yeah, we're working on. We were doing pretty good on YouTube, and then it sort of flatlined about a month ago.
It does that. It goes.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. So, all right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for staying with us tonight. I hope this was useful, and we will see my partner again July 27th. But you can catch him every single Wednesday night.
That's right.
8 p.m.
Yep, 8 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be talking with Mario Manzini, a vaudeville magician.
I love how you mix it up.
If he can figure out the camera.
Let's fingers crossed.
Yes, he can do all the tricks, but the camera is the ultimate.
Is he going to do some stuff on the show?
I would definitely try to get him to do something like that.
Awesome.
Because those are pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yes,
I'm gonna go watch some Gilligan's Island. I'm creating all these weird theories, and people are getting hooked in. They're rewatching Gilligan's Island, so it's a lot of fun. Talk to you all soon.
Good night.
Good night.